A woman in a simple grey pantsuit is told to go wait with the other defendants. She's just trying to find her new office, but the court clerk sizes up her dark skin and dismisses her. The clerk, a woman who has ruled this courthouse lobby for 20 years, lets out a high, sharp laugh. A judge? You? Honey, that's the funniest thing I've heard all day. She turns her back, not knowing her entire world is about to be dismantled, because the woman she just insulted isn't a defendant. She isn't a lawyer. She is Judge Annalise Vaughn, and she just saw something she was never supposed to see. The Banneker County Courthouse was not a building that welcomed you. It was a building that processed you. It stood 6 stories tall, a block of imposing, soot-stained granite from the 1950s. Its small, slit-like windows looked less like portals for light and more like arrow slits in a fortress. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of stale coffee, industrial floor wax, and the quiet metallic scent of desperation. At 7:45 a.m., the main hall was still mercifully quiet. The morning rush of defendants, witnesses, and frantic lawyers hadn't yet begun. Annalise Vaughn stood for a moment just inside the heavy bronze doors, adjusting the strap of the simple leather satchel on her shoulder. She was new, not just to the courthouse, but to the state, having accepted a mid-term transfer to fill a sudden vacancy on the Superior Court bench. She was here early, in her civilian clothes, a charcoal grey pantsuit that was professional, yet anonymous. She always did this. On her first day at any new assignment, she arrived before the chaos, before the robes and the gavel, to simply watch, to feel the rhythm of the place. A courtroom, she believed, had a heartbeat, and often that heartbeat was arrhythmic, sick. Her eyes scanned the grand, echoing lobby. To her right, a long, scratched wooden bench. To her left, the main clerk of court's office, a fortress within the fortress, protected by a wall of thick, bullet-resistant glass. There were 3 windows, but only one was open, casting a pale yellow light onto the linoleum floor. Behind that window sat a woman. She had a magnificent, towering beehive of blonde grey hair that looked like it had been sprayed into concrete submission. Her glasses were on a beaded chain around her neck, and her face was set in a permanent expression of sour authority. A small engraved plastic sign on the glass read, "Brenda Hatcher, head clerk." Annalise watched as a young man in an ill-fitting suit, clearly a brand-new lawyer from the public defender's office, approached Brenda's window. "Excuse me, Ms. Hatcher," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm just trying to file a continuance motion for State vs. Peterson. I was told." Brenda didn't even look up from her computer. She held up one sharp-nailed finger. The lawyer physically recoiled, as if she'd slapped him. He waited. 10 seconds. 30. A full minute passed. Annalise noted the power play. Brenda was teaching him his place. Finally, Brenda sighed, a long, theatrical breath of pure inconvenience. She turned her head slowly. "Peterson, right. You're late," she snapped. "The filing deadline is 9, the young lawyer stammered. It's 7:48. "The file deadline is 9, Brenda corrected him, her voice dripping with condensation. "The my time is valuable deadline was yesterday. You public defenders think you can just wander in here any time you please and dump your paperwork on my desk. I have judges to manage." She snatched the papers from his hand. "Go wait. I'll get to it when I get to it. And your tie is crooked." The lawyer, face burning red, mumbled a "thank you" and scurried away, straightening his tie. Annalise let out a slow, quiet breath. So that's the gatekeeper, she thought. She knew the type. Every courthouse had one, a career bureaucrat who had mistaken their small, vital cog in the machine for the entire engine. They didn't just file papers, they wielded power. They controlled access, schedules, and by extension, the flow of justice itself. And this one, Annalise suspected, enjoyed the taste of that power far too much. She adjusted her satchel and walked forward. Her heels made a sharp, clean click-clack on the floor, a sound that seemed to annoy Brenda Hatcher before she even arrived. Annalise stood at the window. She gave the clerk a polite, neutral smile. "Good morning," she said. Brenda's eyes did a quick, dismissive scan. From Annalise's simple, unstyled hair, down her dark face, over the plain pantsuit, and to her practical shoes. It was a comprehensive, 2-second inventory of her perceived status. The verdict was clear in the clerk's eyes. Unimportant. "Morning," Brenda said, her tone flat. "What case?" "No case," Annalise replied, keeping her voice pleasant. "My name is Annalise Vaughn. I'm the new judicial appointment for 3B. I'm here to pick up my keys and the welcome packet from the court administrator." Brenda Hatcher went perfectly still. She looked up from her screen, and this time the look was not dismissive. It was openly, shockingly evaluative. She looked Annalise up and down again. Then, a small, tight smile pulled at the corner of her mouth. "Defendant check-in is down the hall. Room 104, she said, gesturing vaguely with her pen. "You're early. They don't open till 8. Annalise's own smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. "I'm sorry. I think you misheard me. I'm not a defendant. I'm Judge Vaughn. I'm taking over Judge Porter's calendar in 3B. This time, Brenda Hatcher didn't smile. She laughed. It wasn't a small chuckle. It was a loud, high, barking cackle that echoed in the empty lobby. It was a laugh of pure, unadulterated ridicule. "A judge?" she cackled, leaning back in her chair and pressing a hand to her chest. "Honey, that's rich. Oh, they'll just let anyone play dress-up these days, won't they?" She leaned forward, her face a mask of patronizing condescension. "Look, lady, I don't know what you're trying to pull. Maybe you're one of those sovereign citizen types, or maybe you're just plain lost. But judges," she said, tapping the glass, "don't look like you, and they don't just wander in off the street." "Don't look like me," Annalise repeated, her voice dropping 10 degrees. "You heard me," Brenda snapped, her brief humor evaporating into pure venom. "Now, I've got actual work to do. Go on, Go wait with the rest of the public over on the benches until your real case is called. And don't bother me again." Brenda Hatcher swiveled her chair around, presenting Annalise with her stiff, beehived back. It was the ultimate dismissal. Annalise stood at the window. The silence in the lobby was profound. The young PD lawyer was watching from the far corner, his eyes wide, with a mixture of horror and fascination. Annalise felt the familiar, hot rush of anger. It was an old, tired companion, the casual, baked-in racism that assumed her skin color dictated her station. She could have escalated. She could have pulled out her judicial ID card, issued by the governor's office. She could have demanded to see the court administrator, a man named Philip Jenkins. But a different instinct took over. The sharp, predatory instinct of a prosecutor, which she had been for 15 years before taking the bench. Brenda Hatcher wasn't just rude, she was bold. This level of open contempt didn't grow in a vacuum. It was nurtured. It was a sign of entitlement, so deep that it felt completely protected. And Annalise, who had been planning to go straight to her new chambers, made a different decision. "Fine," Annalise said, her voice perfectly calm. "I'll wait." She turned, not with a shuffle of defeat, but with a deliberate, measured pace. She walked to the hard wooden bench against the far wall. She sat down, placed her leather satchel in her lap, and crossed her legs. She was no longer just feeling the rhythm of the courthouse. She was hunting. Brenda Hatcher, from her glass fortress, was the most powerful person in this lobby. And she had just made the critical, fatal mistake of laughing at the one person who had just become more powerful than her. The lobby began to fill. The 8 a.m. wave was composed of people who had to be there, the defendants on bond, the families, the people fighting evictions. They shuffled in, clutching pieces of paper, their faces drawn with anxiety. They formed a disorganized, nervous line in front of Brenda's window. From her vantage point, Annalise Vaughn had a perfect, unobstructed view. She sat as still as a heron, her gaze missing nothing. She watched Brenda's theatre. To a white man in a crisp suit, she was all, "Yes, sir, Mr. Donovan," and "Right away, sir." To a panicked-looking Hispanic woman holding a crying baby, she was a brick wall. "English," Brenda barked. "I don't speak, whatever that is." "Next." To a young black man asking where to pay a fine, she sighed. "Do I look like a cashier? Go to the basement and tuck your shirt in. This is a courthouse, not a nightclub." It was a disgusting, predictable display. But then Annalise saw it. The man in the crisp suit, the one Brenda had called Mr. Donovan, returned. His name was Rex Donovan. Annalise recognized him, vaguely, from a legal review. He was a bottom feeder, a fixer who specialized in DUIs for the rich and messy divorces. He was all cologne, expensive watch, and reptilian charm. He didn't stand in line. He walked right up to the side of the glass booth to a small, solid door marked Clerk's Office, Staff Only. He gave it a specific rat-tat-tat knock. A moment later, the door was unlocked from the inside. Brenda Hatcher herself opened it. Just a crack. Her entire demeanor had changed. The sour, combative mask was gone, replaced by a greedy, obsequious smile. "Rex, you're early," she whispered, her voice carrying in the quiet hall. "Got a client with a 9 a.m. arraignment," Donovan murmured, slipping a hand into his jacket. "You have that thing we discussed, the AM docket assignment?" "Right here," Brenda said. She discreetly passed him a single sheet of paper, folded twice. Annalise watched, laser-focused. A docket assignment. Why the secrecy? Lawyers could pull that online. Unless this was a pre-assignment. Unless Brenda was letting him know which judge his case would be randomly assigned to before the assignment was officially made, giving him time to prepare a judge-specific motion, or worse, file a last-second continuance if he got a judge he didn't like. It was gaming the system. Donovan took the paper and, just as smoothly, passed her an envelope. It was a standard white business envelope, but it was thick. Too thick for a letter. It was the thickness of folded cash. Brenda took it without a second glance, slipping it into the drawer of her desk. "Pleasure doing business," she said. "Always, Brenda," Donovan said, flashing a toothy grin. He turned and strode out of the courthouse, the picture of confidence. Annalise felt her blood run cold. This wasn't just racism. This wasn't just a bitter woman on a power trip. This was felony corruption. This was bribery, happening in plain sight, 5 minutes before the court was even in session. She had been here for less than 30 minutes, and she had just witnessed the clerk of court taking a bribe to compromise the integrity of the judicial lottery. She almost stood up. Her instinct was to flash her badge, call the bailiffs, and have them both arrested. But she held back. The prosecutor in her took over. 1 observation is an incident. 2 is a pattern. She waited. 10 minutes later, at 8:10 a.m., a woman ran into the lobby. She was frantic, her eyes red from crying, her hair a mess. She clutched a thick sheaf of documents to her chest. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She ran to Brenda's window, where the line was now 5 deep. "Please," the woman begged, cutting the line. "Please, I have to file this. It's a restraining order. He found my sister's address. He said he's coming. Please, I have to file it before my hearing at 9:30. The man in line, a construction worker in a dusty jacket, turned. "Hey, lady, back of the line." "I can't," she sobbed, pressing her papers against the glass. "Please, Mum. Brenda, please." Brenda Hatcher looked at the woman with a face of utter boredom. "First, you don't cut the line. Second, all TROs and ex parte motions had to be filed by 8:00 a.m. to be heard this morning. You're late. You'll have to file it, and it will be on tomorrow's docket." "Tomorrow?" the woman shrieked, a sound of pure terror. He could find me by tomorrow. I don't have until tomorrow. It's right here. Can't you just stamp it?" "It's 8:11, Brenda said, pointing to the clock. "The computer locks the 8 a.m. filings. My hands are tied. It's the system." The woman completely broke down, sliding down the glass wall onto the floor, her sobs echoing. No, you don't understand." Annalise watched. This was the moment. This was the test. Brenda watched the woman cry for a long, cold moment. Then she sighed, as if dealing with a petulant child. She came out from behind the door, walking over to the sobbing woman. "Look," Brenda said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, dirty whisper that Annalise could just barely overhear. "Look. Get up. You're making a scene." She helped the woman to her feet. I might be able to help you. The system is flexible sometimes, but the late filing override requires a fee, a significant one, for the, administrative hassle." The woman's head snapped up. Hope and confusion warred on her face. "A fee? I'll pay it. How much?" "The fine for an emergency override," Brenda said, her eyes dead, "is $200. Cash." Annalise watched the woman's face fall. "200. I have $150. It's all I have until my check." Brenda considered this. She glanced around the lobby. Her eyes swept right over Annalise, dismissing her as part of the worthless scenery. $150 will have to do," Brenda conceded, as if doing her a great favor. "Give it to me." The woman fumbled in her purse, her hands shaking so badly she could barely open her wallet. She pulled out a wad of crumpled bills, a 50, 4 20s, and 5 1s. She handed them over. Brenda took the cash, palmed it, and then took the woman's paperwork. "Wait here," she commanded. She went back into her booth. Annalise watched her every move. Brenda sat at her computer. She typed for a moment. Then she opened a drawer, pulled out a manual date and time stamp, and fiddled with the dials. She rolled it back. She stamped the woman's papers. Received, 7:58 a.m. She had backdated a legal filing in exchange for a cash bribe. She was extorting a domestic violence victim. Annalise Vaughn slowly closed her eyes. The rage she felt was so cold, so pure, it was almost serene. It was the rage of a surgeon identifying a cancer. This wasn't just a rotten cog. This was a tumor that was poisoning the entire institution. Brenda came back out and handed the papers to the woman. "There, stamped. You're on the 9:30 docket. Go to courtroom 2A. Now get out of my sight." The woman, still crying, but now with relief, thanked her profusely and ran toward the elevators. Brenda Hatcher went back to her desk, slid the $150 into the same drawer as Rex Donovan's envelope, and called, "Next." Annalise looked at the clock on the wall. It was 8:25 a.m. She had a new purpose. This was no longer about her own dignity. It was no longer about the sting of racism. That was the symptom. The disease was Brenda Hatcher, and Judge Annalise Vaughn was here to cut it out. For the next 20 minutes, Annalise sat. She did not move. She just watched. She catalogued every interaction, every sneer, every smirk. She saw Brenda lose a file for a low-income housing advocate, forcing a delay, and then find it for a corporate lawyer who brought her a box of expensive-looking pastries. The entire lobby was her personal kingdom, and she ruled it with a blend of petty tyranny and calculated corruption. At 8:45 a.m., a tall, uniformed man came through the side doors. He had bailiff on his jacket and a name tag that read Officer Kent. He had a weary, seen-it-all face. He nodded at Brenda. "Morning, Brenda. Usual chaos?" "You know it, Frank," Brenda said, smiling warmly at him. It was a complete transformation. "The dregs are out in force today. Judge Porter would have had half of them in holding for contempt by now. I don't know about this new one." "Vaughn, right? From out of state?" Kent asked, sipping a coffee. "That's the one," Brenda said, lowering her voice, "but not enough. Some affirmative action hire, I'm sure. Probably won't know a motion to compel from a motion to dismiss. We'll have to train another one. It's exhausting." Annalise listened, her expression unchanged. Affirmative action hire, another barb, another assumption. She filed it away with the rest. "Well," Kent said, finishing his coffee and tossing the cup. "Time to open the doors to the circus. You ready for 3B? "As I'll ever be," Brenda sighed. Kent walked to courtroom 3B, which was right off the main lobby, and unlocked the heavy wooden doors. The first few lawyers and citizens waiting for the 9 a.m. docket began to trickle in. Brenda gathered a stack of files, her face settling back into its sour mask. This was the moment. Annalise Vaughn stood up. The sudden movement, after her long stillness, drew Brenda's eye. Annalise zipped her leather satchel. She adjusted the collar of her pantsuit. She walked, not to the clerk's window, but directly toward the judges and staff-only door beside it, the same one Rex Donovan had used. Brenda's head snapped up. The casual contempt was back, now sharpened with irritation. "Hey, you! I told you that door is not for the public!" she shouted. The entire lobby quieted. "Are you deaf? I told you to wait on the bench." Annalise ignored her. She reached the door. "Mom!" Brenda was on her feet now, her voice rising to a screech. "I will have you held in contempt of court. You can't just—" Annalise reached into her suit pocket and pulled out a simple, white plastic keycard. It was the temporary all-access pass given to her by the head of State Judicial Administration, pending her permanent ID. She didn't look at Brenda. She faced the small black scanner on the wall and held the card up. There was a quiet beep, and the light on the scanner flashed from red to green. Brenda Hatcher's screech died in her throat, choked off by a sudden, sharp intake of breath. The lobby was dead silent. The only sound was the heavy click of the electronic lock disengaging. Annalise pushed the door open. She paused in the doorway and turned her head. She looked directly at Brenda Hatcher, whose face had gone the color of spoiled milk. The beehive hair seemed to wilt. Her mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. "Ms. Hatcher," Judge Annalise Vaughn said, her voice quiet, but carrying the unmistakable ring of absolute authority. It was a voice that didn't request. It commanded. "It is 8:50 a.m. Court convenes in 10 minutes. In that time, I expect 3 things." Brenda's hands, which had been on her hips, were now shaking at her sides. "First," Annalise continued, "you will retrieve the keys to my chambers, chambers 3B, from wherever you have them stored. Second, you will fetch my welcome packet from the court administrator's office. I'm sure Mr. Jenkins will be fascinated to hear about my reception this morning. And third," Annalise said, her eyes boring into the terrified clerk. "You will bring me a cup of black coffee. You will place all 3 items on my bench in courtroom 3B. You will then return to your station and prepare for the roll call." Annalise let the orders hang in the air. The young public defender, who had been lingering to watch, was now desperately trying to hide his smile behind a case file. Your Honor," Brenda stammered, her voice a reedy, panicked whisper. I didn't recognize you. You thought, Annalise said, cutting her off with surgical precision, that I was a defendant. You thought I was the public. You thought I didn't look like a judge. What you failed to think, Miss Hatcher, is that the person you are speaking to, any person who walks into this courthouse, deserves a baseline of human dignity. Your assumptions are not my problem, but they are, as of this moment, your problem. Annalise stepped through the doorway. 10 minutes, Miss Hatcher, she said over her shoulder. Don't be late. It sets a bad example. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving a stunned, silent lobby in her wake. Brenda Hatcher stood frozen for a full 5 seconds, her face a grotesque mask of dawning horror. The blood drained from her head so fast she had to grip her desk to stay upright. The humiliation was total. The power dynamic of the Banneker County Courthouse had just been inverted, instantly and violently. Then terror gave way to panic. She flew into motion, grabbing her own keys, fumbling at her drawer, then sprinting, as much as she could sprint, down the hall toward the administrator's office. She was no longer a queen. She was a terrified servant, running an errand for a new master. And the worst part, the part that was making her heart hammer against her ribs, wasn't just the humiliation. It was the sudden, sickening memory of Rex Donovan. The envelope, the woman with the restraining order, the backdated stamp. How long had that black woman, that judge, been sitting on that bench? What exactly had she seen? The 10 minutes Annalise spent in her new chambers were a blur of focused preparation. The room smelled of old books and lemon polish. Judge Porter, her predecessor, had left nothing behind. It was a blank slate. Annalise found the judicial robes hanging in a tall wooden wardrobe. She pulled the heavy black fabric over her shoulders, the familiar weight settling on her. It was her armor. She was not, as Brenda had suggested, an affirmative action hire. She was a Harvard law graduate, a former assistant U.S. attorney, and a federal prosecutor who had dismantled 2 of the largest racketeering rings in Chicago. She had taken this state-level judgeship to be closer to her aging father. She hadn't come here looking for a fight. But Brenda Hatcher, in her arrogance, had just started a war. At 8:59 a.m., Annalise stood behind the thick wooden door that led to the bench. She heard the muffled sounds of the courtroom settling. At 9:00 a.m. on the dot, Officer Kent, his face carefully neutral, bellowed, "All rise. The Banneker County Superior Court, Part 3B, is now in session. The Honorable Judge Annalise Vaughn presiding." The door opened. Annalise walked out and up to the bench. The courtroom was medium-sized and packed. Lawyers filled the jury box and the front rows. Defendants and their families, a mix of anxiety and boredom, filled the back. And at the clerk's station, to her right, stood Brenda Hatcher. She looked as if she had aged 10 years. Her face was pale and slick with sweat. The keys to the chambers, the welcome packet, and a styrofoam cup of coffee were all placed, precisely as ordered, on the corner of Annalise's bench. Annalise sat. The room sat. The scraping of chairs echoed. She opened the first file. "Good morning," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone, crisp and clear. "I am Judge Vaughn. I will be handling this calendar moving forward. I have my own set of rules. They are simple. Be on time, be prepared, and be respectful. To me, to the court, and to each other. We will conduct the business of the people with integrity and efficiency. Is that understood?" A murmur of, "Yes, Your Honor," rippled through the lawyers. "Excellent," Annalise said. She looked down at the docket, and she saw the first case, State v. Peterson, the young public defender's case. "First up," she said, "Docket 901, State v. Peterson. Counsel, please approach." The young PD, the one from the lobby, walked forward, his eyes still wide. "Your Honor," he began, "I filed a motion for continuance this morning." "I see it," Annalise said. "And I also see that the state opposes?" The assistant district attorney, a sharp woman in a blue suit, stood. "We do, Your Honor. The victim has flown in twice. We are ready to proceed." Annalise looked back at the PD. "Counselor, your reason?" My client's alibi witness was just located. She lives in rural—" "Motion granted," Annalise said. The ADA and the PD both blinked. Your Honor," the ADA said. "Motion granted, counsel," Annalise repeated, staring at the file. "The right to present a full defense is constitutional. The inconvenience to the state is logistical. We will find a new date." She looked at Brenda. "Ms. Hatcher, please find a new trial date for, let's say, 6 weeks from now. Please coordinate with both counsels." Brenda fumbled with the computer, her hands visibly shaking so much she could barely type. The young PD was staring, mouth agape. He had just won a motion he was sure to lose. It was the first subtle shift. Annalise proceeded through the next 5 cases with rapid, sharp efficiency. She denied a routine delay from a high-priced lawyer. She granted a hardship request from a defendant. She was fair, fast, and unyielding. The lawyers were catching on quickly. This judge did not suffer fools. Then she reached the middle of the stack. Next, a request for an ex parte temporary restraining order. Jenkins v. Jenkins. The frantic woman from the lobby, Sarah Jenkins, was sitting in the front row, trembling. "Ms. Jenkins, please approach," Annalise said. She read the petition. It was a brutal, straightforward story of spousal abuse and escalating threats. "Ms. Jenkins, I have read your petition. I find your claims credible and the threat imminent. The temporary restraining order is granted, effective immediately," Annalise said. The woman burst into tears, this time of relief. "Thank you, Your Honor. Oh God, thank you." "Officer Kent," Annalise said, "please escort Ms. Jenkins to the TRO office to have the order served and ensure she has a safe escort from this building." "Yes, Your Honor," Kent said, moving. "And Ms. Hatcher," Annalise said, her voice suddenly sharp. Brenda flinched as if struck. "Yes, Your Honor. Please bring me the original filing of Jenkins versus Jenkins, the one from your desk." This was it. The air in the courtroom changed. This was not a normal request. "Your Honor," Brenda stammered. The file it's right here in the system." "I am not asking about the system, Miss Hatcher. I am asking for the physical paper you stamped this morning. Retrieve it. Now." Brenda's face was ashen. This was a direct, impossible to misunderstand order. She walked, her legs like lead, back to her office behind the courtroom. The entire room was silent, watching this bizarre, tense drama unfold. She returned a moment later with the file. She handed it up to Annalise. Annalise looked at it. She looked at the smudged red ink stamp in the corner. Received, 7:58 a.m. She then looked up at the large institutional clock on the courtroom wall. It read 9:22 a.m. "Miss Hatcher," Annalise said, her voice dangerously quiet. "I observed you take this filing from Ms. Jenkins myself. I observed you stamp it." Brenda's breath was coming in short, panicked gasps. "And my observation," Annalise continued, "is that this filing was received by you at approximately 8:15 a.m., not 7:58. The courtroom exploded in hushed whispers. The lawyer's eyes went wide. This was an accusation of backdating, a cardinal sin. "Your Honor, there must be a mistake. The clock, my stamp." Brenda was dissolving. "There is a mistake," Annalise said, her voice like steel, "but it is not mine. I am also curious, Miss Hatcher, about the emergency override fee you charged Ms. Jenkins. The $150 in cash. I'd like to know what statute or county ordinance authorizes that specific fee." Brenda Hatcher made a small, strangled sound. She gripped the Clerk's station. She was trapped. She had been caught, red-handed, by the one person she couldn't bully, lie to, or dismiss. I... And then, Annalise said, raising her voice to address the entire court, "We are going to have a long discussion about docket assignments, specifically the pre-arrangement consultation you had this morning with a Mr. Rex Donovan." In the back of the courtroom, Rex Donovan, who had just sauntered in to handle his 9:30 case, froze. His smug grin vanished. He saw Brenda's white face, and then his eyes locked with Annalise's. He knew instantly that he was caught. Annalise Vaughn leaned forward. "Miss Hatcher, I am ordering an immediate recess. I am also ordering Officer Kent to secure your desk, your computer, and your personal effects. You are not to touch anything. We will be having a meeting with the presiding judge and the district attorney's office. Officer Kent." "Your Honor, please escort Ms. Hatcher to my chambers." "And Officer Kent?" "Yes, Your Honor. Call the DA. Tell him to send his best investigator from the Public Integrity Unit immediately, and ensure Mr. Rex Donovan does not leave the courthouse. I believe he is a material witness to multiple felonies." "All rise," Kent bellowed, his voice booming as Annalise stood and swept from the bench. Brenda Hatcher let out a low wail and sank into a chair, her face in her hands. The entire courtroom was in stunned, chaotic silence. The gavel had fallen, not on a defendant, but on the system itself. Annalise's chambers were a hive of sudden, furious activity. Officer Kent stood by the door with a trembling, weeping Brenda Hatcher, who had been placed in a simple guest chair. Annalise was on the phone, not with the presiding judge, not yet. She was on the phone with Philip Jenkins, the court administrator. "Philip, this is Judge Vaughn. Yes, the new 3B. No, I haven't had a chance to look at the packet, and that's why I'm calling," Annalise said, her voice a whip crack of controlled fury. She watched Brenda over the rim of her desk. "I'm calling to inform you that I have just placed your head clerk, Brenda Hatcher, on administrative leave, effective 1 minute ago." The voice on the other end of the phone was a squawk of protest. "With all due respect, Philip, I don't give a damn about protocol. I'm telling you what I saw. I've been in this courthouse since 7:45 a.m. I have personally witnessed Ms. Hatcher commit, by my count, at least 3 separate felonies: bribery, extortion, and tampering with court records. So you can either come down here and manage the administrative side of this, or you can read about it in the newspaper tomorrow after I'm done with the district attorney. Your choice." She hung up without waiting for a reply. "Your Honor," Brenda whispered, her voice hoarse from crying, "please, it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. I'll pay the money back." "You'll pay what money back, Ms. Hatcher?" Annalise asked, her voice soft. It was the prosecutor's trap. "The $150 you extorted from a domestic violence victim, or the money Mr. Donovan gave you in the envelope? How many envelopes have there been, Brenda? How long has this been your little side business?" I I don't know what you're talking about. Brenda tried, a last, desperate grasp at denial. You took a thick white envelope from Rex Donovan at approximately 8:05 a.m. in exchange for a folded piece of paper. You then placed that envelope in the top left-hand drawer of your desk, Annalise said, her voice devoid of emotion. I am willing to bet my entire judicial pension that when the investigators open that drawer, they will find that envelope, and it will be full of cash. Am I wrong? Brenda's face crumpled. She knew she was done. The precision of the observation was undeniable. The door to the chambers opened, and presiding Judge Miller swept in. He was an older man with a lion's mane of white hair, and he looked apoplectic. Vaughn, what in God's name is the meaning of this? He boomed. You can't just detain a court employee. You've thrown the entire morning docket into chaos. There are procedures. Judge Miller, Annalise said, standing up. She was shorter than him, but she seemed to take up all the oxygen in the room. Please, sit. Ms. Hatcher, she gestured to Brenda, is a criminal. I caught her, red-handed, selling docket assignments and extorting victims. Miller stopped, his mouth open. Brenda. Our Brenda. She's been here for 30 years. That's a libelous accusation, Judge. Is it? Annalise said. She walked over to Officer Kent. Officer, you secured her desk? Yes, Your Honor. Nothing in or out. Excellent. Judge Miller, Annalise said, turning back to him. Will you accompany me on a brief field trip? Without waiting for an answer, Annalise swept out of her chambers, past the roiling chaos of the courtroom hallway, and back to the clerk's office. Miller and Kent, with Brenda in tow, followed. The lobby was packed and buzzing. Everyone knew something was wrong. Annalise ignored them all, walked behind the counter, and stood at Brenda's desk. The top left-hand drawer, Miss Hatcher, Annalise said. Please open it. Brenda, shaking like a leaf, used her key. She pulled the drawer open. Inside, beneath a stack of sticky notes and paper clips, were 2 envelopes. One was the thick white one from Rex Donovan. The other was a crumpled mess of bills, the $150 from Sarah Jenkins. Judge Miller let out a sound like a deflating tire. Oh, Brenda. No. Annalise, using a pen to avoid touching the envelopes, nudged the white one. This one, I suspect, is from Mr. Donovan. She turned to Miller. She's been selling docket assignments, Judge, letting lawyers like Donovan know in advance who they're getting, so they can prep for a friendly judge or ditch a hard one. She's been poisoning the well. And this, Annalise said, gesturing to the crumpled cash, is from a victim of domestic violence. Ms. Hatcher charged her $150 to backdate a restraining order petition, a petition that, by law, she is required to file for free. She extorted a woman who was terrified for her life. Judge Miller looked at Brenda with a profound, soul-deep disappointment. Brenda. Why? Brenda finally broke. It was a complete, shattering confession. Because they don't pay me enough, she shrieked, her voice cracking. 30 years in this pigsty. 30 years of dealing with this trash, she gestured to the lobby. 30 years of fixing the judge's mistakes, of being yelled at, of being treated like a servant. Donovan, he was just grateful. He said I deserved more. And that woman, she was late. There are rules. The rules you broke, Annalise said, her voice like ice. The rules you sold. At that moment, 2 men in dark suits arrived. They flashed badges at Officer Kent. DA's office, public integrity. We got a call from a Judge Vaughn? That's me, Annalise said, stepping forward. Gentlemen, welcome to the Banneker County Courthouse. This is your primary suspect, Ms. Brenda Hatcher. And this, she gestured to the drawer, is your primary evidence. I believe you'll find she's been running a pay-to-play scheme for, at a minimum, the last 2 hours. I suspect, given her arrogance, it's been going on for years." Annalise then pointed to the door. "Your co-conspirator, Mr. Rex Donovan, is currently being detained in my courtroom. I'd start with him." The investigator's eyes lit up. This wasn't a case they'd have to build. It was a gift-wrapped conviction. As the investigators began the formal process, reading Brenda her rights, photographing the drawer, Annalise turned to Judge Miller. "This is the rot, Judge," she said, her voice low. "This is what happens when we, the judiciary, get too comfortable. We let the Brendas of the world run things. We trade integrity for convenience. This isn't just her failure, it's ours." Miller, who had been a judge for 2 decades, looked around his lobby as if seeing it for the first time. He saw the desperate faces, the confusion, the fear, and he saw the woman who had been exploiting it all. "You're right, Judge," he said, his voice heavy. "You are absolutely right." He looked at Annalise, his eyes filled with a new, dawning respect. "What do you need?" "I need a new clerk," Annalise said. "A temporary one, immediately. Someone who understands that their only job is to serve the public, not to rule it. And I need a full, top-to-bottom audit of every case Miss Hatcher and Mr. Donovan have ever touched together. This," she said, looking at the crying, hyperventilating Brenda, "is just the tip of the iceberg." The arrest of Brenda Hatcher sent a seismic shockwave through the courthouse. She was not just an employee, she was an institution. The sight of her being led out of the lobby in handcuffs, sobbing and shouting about her 30 years, was a spectacle that brought the building to a grinding halt. But Annalise Vaughn was just getting started. While the DA's investigators processed Brenda, who, faced with the irrefutable evidence, had begun to sing like a canary, Annalise had Rex Donovan brought to her chambers. He entered, not with handcuffs, but with 2 very large bailiffs and his own high-priced lawyer, who had apparently been on speed dial. The smugness was gone, replaced by a waxy, terrified pallor. "Judge Vaughn," his lawyer began, a man named Harris. "My client is here voluntarily, but—" "Save it, Mr. Harris," Annalise said, sitting behind her new desk. "Your client is not here voluntarily. He is here because I ordered him detained as a material witness to bribery of a court officer. However, in the last 30 minutes, Ms. Hatcher has cooperated, and it seems material witness is being upgraded to co-conspirator." Donovan went white. It was a gift. She helps me with scheduling. It's a tip, like a barista." Annalise actually laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "A tip? Mr. Donovan, you are an officer of the court. You know, just as I know, that what you did was bribe a public official to gain an unfair advantage in the judicial assignment process. You weren't tipping her. You were paying her to stack the deck, to compromise the very foundation of blind justice in this county." She leaned forward. "So here is what is going to happen. The DA's investigators are right next door. In a moment, they are going to come in here and arrest you. You will be processed, and your bail will be set at a level that will make your eyes water. The state bar will be notified this afternoon, and your license will be summarily suspended by sundown." "This is an outrage," Harris blustered. "No, this is a reckoning," Annalise corrected him. "However, I am a practical woman. Ms. Hatcher's corruption is my primary concern. You," she said to Donovan, "are just a symptom. So you have one choice. You can cooperate, fully. You can detail every single bribe, every case you paid to have steered, every piece of information you bought from her. You will wear a wire, and you will help them uncover just how deep this rot goes. If you do that, Maybe the DA will be inclined to listen when you ask for leniency. Or you can play tough with Mr. Harris, and I will personally recommend to the DA that you are charged with the maximum on every single count. Your career is over, Mr. Donovan. The only question is whether you spend the next 10 years in a cell." Donovan looked at his lawyer, his eyes screaming for help. Harris, seeing the brick wall in front of him, just sighed and loosened his tie. You should listen to the judge, Rex." Donovan collapsed. He confessed to everything. It was worse than Annalise had imagined. For 5 years, Donovan had been paying Brenda. It started small, $100 to lose a file for a day. It escalated to $500 to guarantee his case landed in front of a notoriously lenient part-time judge. But the real bombshell, the one that made Annalise feel sick, was what was in the folded paper she'd seen him take that morning. It wasn't a docket assignment. It was a sealed witness list. Donovan's 9:30 a.m. arraignment was for a high-profile felony assault. His client was a wealthy, connected thug. The paper Brenda had given him contained the name and home address of the prosecution's star witness, the victim's sister, who had been in hiding. Brenda Hatcher hadn't just been selling scheduling favors. She had been selling people. For cash. Annalise's blood ran cold. She immediately called the DA's investigator back in. "Forget Donovan. I need a protective detail. Now, get a team to this address," she said, reading the address from Donovan's confession. "The witness in State versus Marchetti is compromised." The revelation changed everything. This was no longer bribery. This was conspiracy. This was endangerment. This was a level of corruption that could get people killed. The karma that hit Brenda Hatcher was no longer about losing her job. It was about losing her life. When confronted with this, with the fact that her tip had put a woman's life in mortal danger, even Brenda's defenses shattered. The investigators found a client list in a locked drawer. Rex Donovan was just one of 6 lawyers in her pay-for-play scheme. She had a ledger. She had dates. She had amounts. Her 30 years of service was a 30-year criminal enterprise built on a foundation of casual cruelty and systemic racism, and funded by extorting the desperate and the corrupt. She wasn't just fired. She was held without bail as a flight risk and a danger to the community. Her entire life's work, her identity as the queen of the courthouse, was incinerated in the space of 3 hours. All because she laughed at the wrong woman. All because she assumed that a black woman in a pantsuit couldn't possibly be her new boss. The Banneker County Courthouse did not recover quickly. The Brenda Hatcher scandal, as the papers dubbed it, was catastrophic. Brenda Hatcher pled guilty to a slew of charges, including 14 counts of bribery, 28 counts of tampering with public records, and 1 count of conspiracy to obstruct justice. The judge, brought in from another county, threw the book at her. The 30 years of service was not a mitigating factor. It was an aggravating one. She was sentenced to 12 years in state prison. She fainted when the sentence was read. Rex Donovan was disbarred. His testimony, given in exchange for a lighter sentence, took down 3 other lawyers and permanently tarnished the careers of 2 more. His wealthy client, seeing the case against him implode, also took a plea. The witness, thankfully, had been secured by the DA's team just in time. But Annalise Vaughn's work was far from over. The real karma wasn't just Brenda's punishment. It was the rebuilding. Annalise, with the full backing of a humbled Judge Miller, led the charge. Her first act was to hire a new head clerk. She promoted the young, timid public defender who had been Brenda's first victim of the day. He was stunned, but Annalise saw his core of integrity. "Mr. Peterson," she told him in her chambers, I'm not offering you this job because you're a great lawyer. I'm offering it because you were respectful, even when you were being disrespected. You followed the rules, even when you were being bullied. This office doesn't need a tyrant. It needs a public servant. Can you be that?" He accepted, and his first act was to hang a new sign at the clerk's window in English and Spanish. "We are here to help. Your dignity is our priority." Annalise's second act was to find Sarah Jenkins, the woman who had paid the $150 bribe. Annalise personally apologized to her on behalf of the court. She had the $150 returned to her from a court emergency fund, and she presided over Miss Jenkins's final restraining order hearing herself, granting a permanent 5-year order of protection. Justice, delayed and extorted, was finally served. But the biggest change was in the atmosphere. Judge Annalise Vaughn had, in one morning, established a new standard. Her courtroom, 3B, became a legend. It was efficient. It was intolerant of games. But it was, above all, fair. She treated the public defenders with the same respect as the corporate lawyers. She listened to defendants. She explained her rulings. The casual, cruel racism that Brenda had wielded like a weapon was gone, choked out by the new light. Months later, Annalise was walking through the lobby at the end of a long day. The lobby was clean. The air felt lighter. The new head clerk, Mr. Peterson, was at the window, patiently explaining a complex filing procedure to a young woman. The young woman was black. She was dressed in a simple suit, and she was clearly nervous, a first-year associate from a small firm. "I know it's confusing," Peterson was saying kindly. "The motion for substitution of counsel has to be filed with the original case number, but the proposed order needs... Here, let me just show you." He came out from behind the glass and stood beside her, pointing to the line on her form. The young lawyer looked up at him, her relief palpable. "Thank you. Thank you so much. I was worried I'd get it wrong." "Everyone gets it wrong the first time," Peterson smiled. "My job is to help you get it right. Welcome to Banneker County, Counselor." Annalise watched the exchange. She saw the young lawyer stand up straighter, her confidence restored. She saw the fear in her eyes replaced by a look of belonging. Annalise continued walking toward the exit. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The quiet click-clack of her heels on the polished floor was the only sound. It was the sound of integrity. It was the sound of a promise kept. The fortress had been breached, the rot had been carved out, and the work of justice, real justice, was finally beginning. True karma isn't just about punishment. It's about consequences. Brenda Hatcher's racist, arrogant laughter was an investment in her own destruction. She spent 30 years building a corrupt kingdom, but she tore it all down in one morning because she couldn't see past the color of a woman's skin. She didn't just lose her job, she lost her freedom. And Judge Annalise Vaughn didn't just get an apology, she got a chance to rebuild the entire system. She replaced the rot with respect. She tore down the walls of prejudice and rebuilt a foundation of integrity. This story is a powerful reminder that the person you dismiss today could be the person who holds your entire world in their hands tomorrow. Respect is not optional. It's the law. What did you think of Brenda's downfall? Was it justified? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love stories where hard karma is served, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this video with a friend who needs to see it. And most importantly, hit subscribe and ring that bell. We have new dramatic stories dropping every week, and you won't want to miss a single one.